There is a powder sitting on a shelf at your hardware store right now. It costs $2. Applied to your roof, it can take a real noticeable amount of heat off your interior temperature on the hottest afternoons. And in some jurisdictions, local ordinances or HOA rules effectively prohibit putting it on your house. The air conditioning industry in this country generates tens of billions of dollars every year. A standard residential AC system runs between $5,000 and $10,000 installed, depending on the size of the house and the region. This powder costs around $14 to treat an entire roof. Nobody is hiding this from you. Nobody who sells a $5,000 air conditioning system has any reason to tell you about a $14 alternative. I want you to hold two numbers in your head for the next few minutes. $2, $14 for a whole roof. Everything else I am going to tell you is built around those two numbers. My name is Ken Fujita. I grew up in rural Nagano, where the summers are short and the winters are hard, and nobody wastes money on a system they can avoid. I have lived in the United States for over 30 years in my own house with my own roof, testing what works. My father never paid to cool a building in his life. He did not need to. What I am about to show you is older than air conditioning by roughly 4,000 years. I will tell you honestly what I know about it, and where the evidence gets thinner than I would like. Week on this channel, one honest fix for your home and your yard. 30 years of methods tested by hand. Nothing sold to you. If that is useful to you, subscribe, and the next one will find you. Now, the idea that should not be possible, and I want to start here because if you do not believe it, nothing else I say will land. This powder, mixed and applied correctly, reflects a large majority of the sunlight that hits it rather than absorbing it. When you apply it to a rooftop surface and the outside temperature climbs past 100 degrees, the interior of that structure holds noticeably cooler. No electricity, no compressor running, no refrigerant cycling. A treated roof runs measurably cooler to the touch than an untreated one on the same afternoon. That is the difference between a roof that absorbs heat and drives it into your living space all afternoon, and a roof that sends most of it back into the sky before it ever enters the building. The material is a fine white powder, calcium carbonate, also called lime white or agricultural lime ground, fine enough to suspend in water and brush or roll onto a surface. 1 kilogram covers roughly 4 to 5 square meters of roof. A full residential roof treatment costs somewhere around $14 in materials. The application takes one afternoon. That is the entire comparison. $14 and one afternoon versus a $5,000 system that runs every day from June through September and adds to your electric bill every single month. But here is what makes this worth your attention. This is not new science. Lime whitewash has been in documented use across high heat climates for several thousand years. Ancient builders in high heat climates did not have thermometers. They had results. Structures across the Mediterranean, across North Africa, across South Asia were whitewashed with lime compounds, not because it looked clean, and not as decoration, but because the buildings stayed cool. The builders understood the outcome before they had any language for the mechanism. The lime reflected the sun. The interior stayed livable. Generation after generation repeated the practice because it worked, and because it cost almost nothing. Reflective light-colored roofing is also well established in modern building science. Researchers at places like Oak Ridge National Laboratory have documented real energy savings from high reflectivity roofing in general, and cool roof standards exist in building codes for exactly this reason. I do not have a controlled study that measured this specific homemade lime mixture at an exact percentage, and I am not going to hand you a number I cannot back up. What I can tell you is what a reflective white surface does physically and what I have seen it do on my own roof. The next question is obvious. If reflective roofing is genuinely useful, and this material costs $2, why is the standard recommendation in every American home improvement aisle a $40 can of elastomeric coating that needs to be reapplied every 5 to 7 years? paint and coatings industry generates a great deal of revenue every year, most of it from products meant to be reapplied on a schedule. A commercial repainting cycle engineered at 5 to 7 years is not an accident of chemistry. It is a business model. A product that costs $14 once and lasts a season with one reapplication does not fit that model. Nobody is burying this information. Nobody with a recurring revenue product has a reason to fund the next study on a $14 alternative or recommend it on the next home improvement segment. That is not a cover-up. That is just how incentives work. Stay with me, because what comes next moves from the financial side of this to the legal side, and that is a different conversation entirely. Some municipalities and HOA jurisdictions across the country have exterior finish requirements or glare ordinances that effectively restrict or prohibit high reflectivity coatings on residential roofs. I could not confirm a precise count of states with active prohibitions. The number varies as ordinances are updated. But the restrictions exist, and you will need to check your own jurisdiction before you apply anything. The language varies by jurisdiction. Some frame it as an aesthetic standard. Some frame it as a glare ordinance. Some fold it into broader exterior finish requirements that effectively mandate the use of approved commercial coatings. Now, 4 safety points before I go further, and I will not skip them. First, calcium carbonate powder is a fine particulate. When you are mixing or applying it in any dry form, wear a dust mask rated N95 or better. It will not damage your lungs the way silica or asbestos would, but sustained inhalation of any fine powder is something you avoid. Eye protection as well. Second, roof application means working at height. Use a ladder rated for your weight, have someone footing it, and never do this alone, have someone else on the ground the entire time you are up there. Check for power lines near the roof line before you set the ladder. Wear shoes with real grip, not sandals or worn-out soles. Do not work a wet roof. Yuki, my wife, keeps an eye on the weather app before I ever touch a ladder. If there is rain in the forecast, she takes the ladder back to the garage herself. I have learned not to argue. A dry morning with no wind is the condition you wait for. Third, calcium carbonate, the material this method uses, is not caustic, but hydrated lime is a different substance entirely, calcium hydroxide, and it is corrosive to skin and eyes. If a bag at the store says hydrated lime or builder's lime, that is not what you want. Set it back on the shelf. You do come into contact with it, wear sealed goggles and gloves, and if it gets in your eyes, flush with water for 15 minutes and call a doctor. Quicklime is a third substance again. It reacts violently with water and can cause severe burns. Never use it for this. The only material this method calls for is plain agricultural lime, calcium carbonate, the bag used to correct soil pH. Fourth, know which formulation you are buying before you climb anything. I will walk through exactly what to look for on the bag before the end of this. Now, the restrictions themselves. The framing in most of these jurisdictions is not safety. The glare ordinance argument has some basis when you are talking about a highly reflective surface facing a road or a neighbor's window at a low angle, legitimate concern at certain orientations. But a blanket prohibition on high reflectivity coatings on horizontal roof surfaces, where the reflectivity goes straight up into the sky and affects no one, is not a safety regulation. It functions as a revenue protection mechanism dressed as an aesthetic standard, whether or not anyone intended it that way. The $5,000 AC system is what the regulation pushes you toward. That system requires professional installation, permitted work in most municipalities, a service contract, a refrigerant refill cycle, and a monthly electric bill from June through September. One of those touch points is a billable event for someone. The $14 roof treatment has no billable events after the first afternoon. I have to be honest with you about what this will not do. This is not a replacement for insulation. If your attic has no insulation or inadequate insulation, the powder reduces the heat entering from above, but it cannot compensate for every failure in the building envelope. Seal your attic properly first. The powder works on the heat load arriving at the roof surface. What is already inside the structure from other sources, poor windows, uninsulated walls, a crawl space open to summer air, those require their own fixes. Address the powder as one layer of a complete system, not a single solution to every cooling problem. Before I show you the exact application method, tell me in the comments what your summer electric bill looks like in the 3 months when your AC runs hardest: June, July, August. What does it cost you? I read every one. Here is how you actually do this, and I want to be specific because the application method is where most people make the one mistake that cuts the performance significantly. You want agricultural lime, also sold as garden lime or calcium carbonate, ground to a fine powder. Not hydrated lime, not quicklime, not masonry lime. Calcium carbonate. The white bag in the garden section, usually used to correct soil pH, around $5 for a 40-pound bag at any farm supply or hardware store. Mix it with water to the consistency of thin paint. 1 part powder to 4 parts water by volume. Stir it thoroughly. Too thick and it cracks when it dries. Too thin and the reflective layer is insufficient. You are looking for whole milk, not cream, not water. Whole milk. Apply it with a wide brush or a low-pressure garden sprayer. Work in the morning before the roof surface heats up. A hot roof surface will flash dry the mixture too fast and leave an uneven coat. Morning application on a surface that has not yet absorbed the day's heat gives the mixture time to bond properly before it sets. 2 coats. Let the first coat dry completely, which takes 2 to 3 hours on a dry morning. Then apply the second. The second coat is where the surface reaches its most reflective. 1 coat performs reasonably well. 2 coats get you closer to the full benefit. Total material cost for an average 1,500 square foot roof is $12 to $16 depending on your region. Application time is 3 to 4 hours across. 1 morning, that is it. Reapplication. Rain weathers the coating over time. In a climate with heavy summer rain, you may reapply once mid-season. In a dry climate, 1 application holds through the full summer. Either way, you are talking about an additional 2 to 3 hours and another $14 per season. Now, the formulation question I promised to come back to. Consumer-grade whitewash products that contain additives, binders, or paint extenders perform measurably lower than a plain lime and water mixture. Still meaningful, but not the full benefit. If you want the best result, you want pure agricultural calcium carbonate mixed to consistency yourself. Not the pre-mixed product, not the paint additive. The powder, the water, the brush, the morning. The method is the same one my father used on outbuildings in Nagano. He did not know the science behind it. He knew the buildings stayed cool and the materials cost almost nothing. In the many jurisdictions where no such prohibition applies, this is available to you this weekend. Check your local ordinance if you are in a regulated jurisdiction. Some HOAs have specific rules about roof color and exterior finish. Know your restrictions before you apply anything. But if you are in a state and an HOA district where no prohibition applies, the material is on the shelf, and the method is straightforward. $14 morning project. A noticeably cooler roof and interior on the hottest days. No electricity consumed. That is the method you want. Walk away from the service contract. Honestly, just skip the elastomeric can on the shelf next to it. If you want to take it further, combine the roof application with interior attic ventilation improvements and window treatments on your south and west facing glass. Those 3 together reduce cooling load more than any single AC upgrade at a fraction of the cost. Next week, I will show you the ventilation side of that system.